Welcome to the Compliance Officer's Playbook podcast. Today we're diving deep into something I'm sure all of you have encountered at some point in your careers.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Conflict. Specifically, those disagreements that can pop up during compliance audits and security reviews.
Yeah, it's the kind of stuff they don't always teach you in those compliance manuals.
You're right. You're all prepped on the regulations, you got your frameworks in hand, and then boom,
Yeah.
you're suddenly in a tense meeting disagreeing with someone over an audit finding. And it's like,
Exactly.
where did all that prep go?
Yeah, it's really important, I think, to have a game plan to approach these situations, and that's exactly what we're going to be exploring today.
Okay.
Our source material actually describes a real-world scenario that I think will resonate with a lot of us.
Okay.
A bit of a heated exchange during a SOC2 audit.
Ooh, I'm intrigued.
Tell me more.
All right, so picture this. A consultant is wrapping up this SOC2 audit, right? And they flag an issue with password complexity.
And the client is immediately on edge. They're thinking, wait a minute, we addressed this, didn't we?
Right.
But the consultant, they're obligated to report any exceptions they find, no matter how small they might seem. So they stand firm, and, things kind of escalate from there.
Ooh, I can already feel the tension building in that room.
Yeah.
I bet that client felt so blindsided. We've all had those pressure cooker moments
For sure.
where it feels like your career, your company's reputation,
Absolutely.
it's all on the line.
And that's what makes the scenario so interesting, because it really highlights those different perspectives.
Right.
What seems like a routine finding for the consultant can feel incredibly high pressure for the client.
It's like this classic us versus them dynamic that gets set up.
Exactly.
And once that happens, it just seems like any chance of having a productive conversation goes out the window.
Totally.
Was there anything else that contributed to this conflict in this specific scenario?
It seems like there was a lack of communication before that final report. If the consultant had just flagged the password complexity issue earlier,
Yeah.
maybe they could have worked through it together.
Right.
Avoided that whole blow up.
So it sounds like it was just this perfect storm of miscommunication
Yeah,
and, just differing perceptions of risk.
exactly. So how can we handle these types of situations more effectively? Our source material actually outlines 4 really useful tools that can help to de-escalate conflict and lead to better outcomes.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's hear these tools.
Tool number 1 is something that may seem pretty obvious, but it's often forgotten in the heat of the moment:
Okay.
seeking understanding.
Okay. I could see how that might be tricky when you're feeling defensive or attacked, but I'm guessing there's more to it than just politely listening and nodding along.
You got it. It's about asking clarifying questions,
Okay.
making sure you're truly on the same page. So instead of getting defensive about that password complexity, finding the client could have said something like, "Help me understand why this is still a concern. We thought we'd address this in our last security update."
Right, so that opens up the conversation
Exactly.
in a way that feels much more collaborative.
Yeah, and maybe in that conversation, the consultant would explain that there's been a recent update to the industry best practices, and the client's current approach no longer meets those standards, right? Seeking understanding is all about uncovering those underlying reasons and motivations.
It's about that active listening
Absolutely.
and empathy,
Yeah,
which can be tough,
it can be.
especially when you're feeling really stressed and under pressure.
Yeah.
But sometimes, even after all that effort to understand each other's perspective, you might still be butting heads.
Yeah,
What then?
that's when our second tool comes in handy: third-party mediation.
Yeah, sometimes you just need a fresh set of eyes, to
Yeah.
help move things forward.
Okay.
And it doesn't mean anyone's wrong.
It's just about acknowledging that you might need a little help to get unstuck.
Okay, so we're bringing in reinforcements.
Exactly.
But how do we frame this so it doesn't seem like we're going over someone's head or trying to undermine their authority?
It's all in the framing. You're not looking for a judge, you're looking for a facilitator. Someone who can help both sides to come to a solution they're both comfortable with.
Okay, so in our SOC2 example, instead of letting the tension fester, the client could say something like, "Hey, I understand your perspective on the password complexity issue, but I'm still not entirely convinced. Would you be open to bringing in someone else from our security team to get their input?"
Exactly. And you know who that third party is? Well, it's going to depend on your specific organization and the nature of the conflict.
Sure.
It could be someone from legal, a senior manager from a different department, or even an external mediator.
That makes sense. It's about finding someone who's neutral and respected by both sides.
Right.
But what if, even with a third party, we're still struggling to find that perfect solution?
Well, that's where our third tool comes in: strategic delay.
Okay.
It's really amazing how much clarity you can gain by simply giving yourself some time to cool off and think things through.
Oh, tell me about it. I can't count how many times I've said something in the heat of the moment
Right.
that I later regretted.
Yeah.
But how do we delay the conversation without seeming dismissive or like we're trying to brush the issue under the rug?
Again, it's all about framing. Instead of just saying no or rushing into a decision, you could say, this is an important issue and I want to make sure we're giving it the time consideration it deserves. Would you be open to giving me until tomorrow morning to gather some additional information and come back to you with a more well thought out response?
Yeah, that feels so much more respectful
Right.
and shows that you're taking the issue seriously.
Exactly.
I can really see how that would de-escalate a tense situation.
Absolutely. And sometimes that delay can even lead to a more creative and collaborative solution.
Okay, so we've covered seeking understanding, bringing in a third party, and strategically delaying the conversation.
Yeah.
What's the fourth and final tool in our conflict resolution toolkit?
Right. Tool number 4 is all about taking a step back and depersonalizing the situation.
Okay.
Because, a lot of times those strong reactions we have are rooted in something much deeper than the immediate issue at hand.
Okay, so going back to our SOC2 example, maybe the client's outburst wasn't really about password complexity at all.
Right.
Maybe they were already stressed about deadlines or they just had a tough conversation with their boss.
Exactly. Remember, everyone is fighting their own battles, and sometimes those battles can spill over into our professional lives.
That is such a powerful reminder.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in the moment and take things personally.
Uh-huh. Especially when we're passionate about our work.
Right.
Yeah.
But how do we actually put this depersonalization tool into practice? That seems a lot easier said than done.
Like anything else, it's a skill. It takes practice. One helpful trick is to just imagine that the person you're in conflict with is having a really bad day.
Okay.
Maybe they're dealing with a sick family member, or their car broke down on the way to work.
Yeah.
It doesn't excuse their behavior, of course,
Right.
but it can help you to approach the situation with a little more empathy and understanding.
I like that. It's about shifting your perspective and remembering that there's usually more to the story than meets the eye.
Precisely. And by cultivating that sense of empathy and understanding, you can break free from that us versus them mentality and start working towards a solution that benefits everyone.
Thinking back to that SOC2 scenario, it's important to remember that there are often these power dynamics at play.
Oh, for sure.
You've got the consultant who's probably seen this type of conflict 100 times before,
Yeah.
and then you've got the client who might be feeling the pressure of an audit for the very first time.
That's a great point. As compliance professionals, we often find ourselves in positions of authority, and it's crucial that we use that authority responsibly.
So that means being mindful of our communication style,
Yes,
avoiding jargon,
absolutely.
explaining things clearly so that everyone feels heard and understood.
It's about being a guide, not a dictator.
Exactly. We're not here to impose our will. We're here to help people understand and comply with the requirements.
Because at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. We all want what's best for the organization. It's about finding that common ground, even when there's disagreement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when we approach conflict with curiosity, empathy, and a genuine desire to find solutions, we create a more collaborative and productive work environment for everyone. We talk a lot about building a culture of compliance,
Yeah,
but it's one of those phrases that gets thrown around so much, it kind of starts to lose its meaning.
totally. It's more than just, having policies and procedures in place.
Right.
It's about creating an environment where people feel empowered to speak up,
Yeah.
even when it's uncomfortable.
It's about feeling safe to raise concerns, ask questions, and even challenge the status quo
Exactly.
without that fear of retribution.
And that's where these conflict resolution tools that we've been talking about become so crucial. When leaders demonstrate these skills, seeking understanding, using third-party mediation, strategically delaying, depersonalizing situations,
Yeah.
it sets the tone for the entire organization.
It shows everyone that disagreements are opportunities for growth and learning,
Wow.
not something to be swept under the rug.
Right. Think about it. When people feel safe and respected, they're more likely to be engaged, productive, and innovative. They're more likely to take ownership of their work and go the extra mile to ensure compliance.
And then on the flip side, when people feel silenced or dismissed,
Yeah.
they're more likely to disengage, cut corners, or even worse, retaliate.
Creating that culture of psychological safety, it's not just a nice to have.
Right.
It's essential for a healthy and effective compliance program.
So to our listeners out there, I want to leave you with a challenge. Okay.
Think about a conflict you're currently facing or one you've experienced in the past. How could you apply these tools that we've talked about today to navigate that situation more effectively?
And even beyond just those individual interactions, how can you help to foster a culture of compliance within your own team or organization?
Yep.
What steps can you take to create that environment of psychological safety where everyone feels empowered to speak up?
We've covered a lot of ground today, but the key takeaway is this. Conflict is inevitable,
It is.
but it doesn't have to be destructive. By embracing these strategies, you can transform disagreements into opportunities for growth, learning, and positive change.
Remember, you're not alone in this. Every compliance professional faces these challenges.
Right.
And by sharing our experiences and learning from each other, we can create a stronger, more supportive community for everyone.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into conflict resolution. We hope you found it insightful and actionable.
And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the Compliance Officer's Playbook podcast for more in-depth discussions and practical advice on all things compliance.
And for those of you who love this show and are hungry for even more compliance wisdom, we invite you to become a paid subscriber today for $4.99 and get full access to all premium episodes packed with insights, stories, and value you won't find anywhere else. The link is in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.